If you are unaware, there is a lawsuit pending against Sean Diddy Combs. According to Business Insider, Macy's wants to be removed from the lawsuit as a defendant because they are co-defendants with Diddy on it. One of their arguments for dismissal is that the rap entrepreneur is an equal opportunity sexual predator, which means that he doesn't have any picks. He can go for women or men, and he doesn't care. He can go black or white. According to the story, the October lawsuit accuses Macy's of violating a New York City gender violence law by covering up an alleged attack by Combs on a male employee at the Herald Square flagship store in 2008. So they're saying the whoever filed this lawsuit is saying that Macy's was part of the conspirators that covered up Diddy doing this in their store because they had a deal with him. And I'm going to show you guys the deal that they had with Macy, that Diddy had with Macy's in a second. It was billion-dollar deal that he had for Shan John. So the article goes on to say the worldwide department chain argues the plaintiff only identified as John Doe cannot accuse Macy's of gender bias because in the very same lawsuit, he himself describes Diddy as willing to attack both men and women. So basically Macy's is saying, yeah, look, we want to be removed from this lawsuit. Not because we didn't cover it up, but because you said that he attacks men and women. So therefore, it can't be gender bias. So you can't accuse us of gender bias. They didn't deny that they covered it up. They didn't deny that they turned the camera sideways. They denied that it wasn't gender bias, that Diddy didn't do it. And Macy's didn't do it because of gender bias. So this has to be dismissed, which is a crazy defense. But that's what Macy's is going with. That's what the Macy lawyers are going with. Maybe they just trying to get it thrown out, I don't know, said plaintiff's own allegations. This is a passage from the Macy's lawyers' court documents from last week, which stated that the plaintiff's own claims proved not only that this was a same-sex assault, but also that Mr. Combs attacked both men and women, regardless of gender. The plaintiff does not address the fact that his own allegations established that Diddy was an equal opportunity predator. They're not denying that this happened, that Diddy did this, that they had any role in covering it up. And I believe that the Macy's CEO, who was there before, who made the deal with Diddy, is no longer alive, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a new CEO there. However, the company is obviously fighting this with their lawyers, so they're not denying anything other than the fact that Diddy doesn't have any picks. He doesn't care. He'll do it to anybody. That's what Macy's is saying. Diddy's team responded, "Yo, whatever Macy's is saying, we are not even going to respond to that. We are just going to leave that there and, just talk about what we are saying. We don't know what they are saying. We know what they're saying, but we don't know what they are saying." After a representative for Mr. Combs declined to comment on Macy's argument, citing instead, and directing Business Insider to his own motion to dismiss the case against him and his company. You see what I mean? Which is absurd, in that it claims that his move also calls into question the validity of New York statutes against gender-based violence. Mr. Combs has denied any assaults on several occasions, and this is a statement made by Diddy's attorneys. They are hoping that this case goes to trial, and they can have it dismissed there because Mr. Combs denies the completely false and salacious claims made against him in the complaint, and is certain that he and the company defendants, against whom no misconduct, part, or participation is even alleged, would be fully vindicated if this case were to proceed to trial. Macy's resembles, "We aren't even trying to get involved, bro. Look, Diddy did this, but we aren't doing anything. We aren't violating any gender laws." That's how it comes off, what they're saying at least, which is crazy. District Court Judge Paul, I don't want to mispronounce his last name. His decision on whether to dismiss Macy's could come at any time. A decision on Diddy's dismissal bid is not due until sometime after the plaintiff responds. Macy's is the deepest pocket defendant by far in any blizzard of more than 30 lawsuits filed against Diddy this year. So Macy's is obviously the biggest defendant financially, is what this article is saying. The plaintiff says in his lawsuit that at the time of the alleged attack he was working at, this is so. this is the story they're about to give us. The story in this article of what this dude is accusing Diddy of doing in the Macy's store. It says that in his lawsuit, at the time of the attack, he was working at the Macy's flagship Manhattan store for Marc Ecko, a rival hip-hop fashion brand to Diddy's Shan John Clo. In his lawsuit, he alleged he was working in a stockroom when Diddy entered. With 3 armed bodyguards, they struck him and threatened to kill him. Did he then orally ped him in the stockroom while calling him Ecko and taunting? I guess he taunted him and said, "You like that, white boy?" This white man is claiming that Diddy did this to him during what was allegedly a 2-minute attack, which is what his complaint claims. Combs then grabbed armfuls of Shan John clothing, left the stockroom with his bodyguards, and proceeded to hand out clothes to shoppers as if nothing had happened. The plaintiff alleged that the chain Macy's did nothing to support him when he came forward with his allegations against Dye. Instead, they fired him to protect a multi-million-dollar deal with Shan John. So this dude is saying, yo, I went to my bosses. I worked at Macy's. I was working for Marc Ecko specifically in Macy's as a vendor in Macy's. This assault happened for whatever reason. I went to the Macy's bosses, and they fired me just for telling on Diddy, because they just did this multi-million-dollar deal with them. In fighting to be dropped as a defendant, lawyers for Macy's argued the suit did not allege store employees were in any way involved in the attack. Macy's lawyers also pointed to the New York City victims of gender-motivated legislation to prevent violence. The man's attorneys had claimed in their lawsuit that their client was entitled to damages from Macy's because of the gender violence law. Macy's countered that the law doesn't allow claims against corporations for assaults that occurred before 2022. So they're essentially attempting to avoid responsibility on a technicality by saying, yo, this law, the article says the lawsuit failed to offer any evidence that alleged violence was motivated by gender bias. In essence, Macy's is saying, yo, you allege that we didn't do certain things because of your gender or because of whatever. That's not true, and our employees weren't involved. So if he did this in our stockroom, it just happened on our grounds. It had nothing to do with us. That's what they're trying to say, and that's the story that they're going with to get out of this. And they're not going with Diddy didn't do this. They're going with, yeah, we know he's sick, but that's on him. So I thought that was crazy, a crazy way. If you didn't know what the deal was with Diddy, I have it right here. I have an old article that explains the deal that Macy's had with Diddy back then. And it says that this is an article from 2010 or 2011, I believe. One or the two, let me see, 2010. So Diddy did this deal, it said, at a press event yesterday. Now, mind you, keep in mind this article is old. So this is just telling us what the deal that Diddy had with Macy's was. I just want you guys to be aware of it so you understand why Macy's would even want to protect Diddy. They invested so much money in him. So this is what it says as at a press event yesterday. The Tren at the trendy Standard Hotel in Manhattan's Meatpacking District. Diddy Combs and Macy's CEO Terry Lundgren declined to specifically discuss the terms of their agreement, but Diddy said Shan John has done more than $1 billion of business at Macy's and plans to do a couple billion more. So this was a $1 billion deal for them. You know what I'm saying? Like Diddy said himself that he's sold over $1 billion of clothing with Macy's and plan to do a couple billion more. So you gotta think as a $1 billion asset. Macy's is not trying to see nothing happen to Diddy at that time. So, of course, if this did happen in that stockroom, what this dude is accusing Diddy of doing, I believe that Macy's would try to cover it up. It said Macy's initially began selling Shan John exclusively at 400 stores, or about half of his nationwide chain. So half the stores, the Macy's stores in the country, were selling Diddy's clothes. It says Combs and Lundgren was the CEO of Macy's at the time, said they've talked about an exclusive distribution deal for years. Combs said the higher profile given to Tommy Hilfiger at Macy's after the brand went exclusive helped seal the deal. So basically, this was a big deal for Macy's, and it was also a big deal for Diddy. This is a $1 billion deal. billions of dollars was being made. So when this dude says that they were covering it up because of, Diddy had a deal and they ended up firing this guy, which is crazy. Firing the dude after this happens to him. Like, that's not even cool. Like, you guys can understand why Macy's would want to cover this up as on an, even if it's evil or even if you don't agree with it, you understand from a business perspective, they don't want this. They didn't want this on their name.